In this interview, I had the privilege of interviewing Cindy Su, who now attends the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at Cornell. Together we discuss Ivy League stereotypes, how to be authentic when applying to colleges, and whether Cornell is ultimately more competitive or collaborative. Hope you enjoy. Hello. Today I am joined by Ms. Cindy Su, and Cindy is a freshman at Cornell. And today she'll just explain a little bit about what life is like there, maybe how she got in.
Yeah, I will say the biggest thing that I'm grateful for the college application process is I'm very grateful that I did all of my standardized testing. By the time I was done with my junior year, I was completely done and I didn't have to worry about it anymore. I had friends that were still struggling to study for the SAT, ACT while they were writing their college applications. So I was like, bro, I'm already in the trenches. I can't believe you're also studying while writing your essays. It just takes up too much of your time to be studying and writing and trying to keep up with your regular classes at the same time. So definitely do all of your standardized testing and all of the basic stuff as soon as you can. So going back to the college application process at Exeter, the culture there is not normal. I think about it all the time. We send tons of kids to Ivies every year, and that's unheard of at any other regular school. But that also means that the pressure to get into an Ivy, to get into a top 20 is a lot higher. A lot of times I'll hear students say overheard in the hallways, if they didn't get into an Ivy, it wasn't worth coming to Exeter.
Wow.
Especially when early decisions were coming out, people were very disappointed. A lot of them felt very I came all this way to Exeter and I didn't get into my dream school. And so I think the pressure was very high. I tried to take it all with a grain of salt for me because I knew especially with my sister having gone through the college application process already, I tried to keep my expectations real. Be you know what, I'm going to do the best I can. When the results come back, this will be my best effort. Yeah, I just tried to keep that mindset. And so if there's anybody that's still, going through the college application process, I want them to remember that.
Another note that we talk about a lot is just authenticity throughout Exeter. It can sometimes be hard to remain authentic even. I was just talking to Tina. Okay, sometimes, are we doing this because we want to get into college? Are we doing this because it's really us? Maybe a mix of both. When we write about ourselves too in these essays, how do we make sure that it reflects who we are? Of course, we're trying to present our best self too, but I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that for the essays in particular. How did you express yourself authentically, or how many drafts did you go through? Did it take weeks or months, or what was going on through your head during that time?
Yeah, I will say when I think about being authentic in college essays, I think there's two important parts of being authentic. There's one, when you're doing the activities in high school, you need to be authentic with yourself and be
Right.
am I really enjoying this? Is this something I really want to be spending my time on? Because so many times I've heard students where they're oh, I'm just doing this club because I think it will help me get into college. I want this leadership position because I think it will look great on my resume. In the end, when you're writing the essays, I felt this too, right? No matter how many activities you do, and I tried to be really strict with myself and be okay, if this isn't serving what I want to do in the future, or if this doesn't make me feel happy while I'm doing this leadership activity or whatever, I'm not willingly putting time into, let's say, being the leadership of this club, then why am I doing it? And then, when I was reflecting back on it and writing my essays, it really shows. The clubs where I didn't have as much passion for, I had a harder time writing about because you don't have anything to write about. People talk about having a running thread through your entire persona of your college application, who you're presenting to the admissions officers. And I think because I had forced myself to kick all the clubs and things that I didn't truly enjoy, it was much easier for me to be oh, actually, I'm a ed tech entrepreneur who likes, sharing my knowledge with others. That came together because all the activities that I were doing was genuinely authentic to what I enjoyed doing. And so when you're writing the essay, then you're oh, I can present myself in this way. It becomes easier to have a narrative that you present. Whereas if you have a bunch of clubs and things that you don't actually enjoy, how are you supposed to do that? Because it's not real. Yeah. Sorry, I feel really strongly about this because
Yeah.
it's also like it's hard on the people that if you're in a club and you don't really enjoy it, but you are with other students that do enjoy it, you're taking away from their experience too, right? Because then oftentimes you aren't as willing to put in the time and effort to work on something. I've done this
Mm,
before myself. Like I'm not saying
yeah,
this from
me
like a,
too.
altruistic point of view or anything like that. It's just like it's something I genuinely realize. Like if you aren't like passionate about it, you're not gonna do a good job at it. Yeah, that's like the two main things about being authentic is like you have to like do the activities that are authentic to you, and then like when you're writing, then it will come out authentically. Of course, it's not easy. I went through so many drafts. I like actually my early round, the Common App that I submitted for my early round was completely different from the ones that I submitted for my regular.
Oh, really?
Well, it was still the same topic, but the way I presented it was completely different. I realized I had kind of made myself too focused on moving the story along, and it wasn't very
Mm.
narrative esque. I remember Kevin reading over my Common App, and then he was like, "Oh, like I remember it being like it's not very interesting to read." Like for me personally, like when not saying that you said this about me, but like when I was looking back at it, I was like, "Wow, like this is low key really boring." Like it's not like I feel like I'm generally a pretty interesting person, pretty funny,
You
and
are.
none of that really came through because I had focused myself on like I need to push this narrative forward. Like definitely a lot of drafts, like your first essay, you will get better at writing essays when you write them, and it kind of sucks that you aren't able to have like an amazing perfect essay for your early, but all the time.
Gotcha, gotcha. Wow, that was a lot. Yeah, touched upon authenticity, the essay writing process. Usually from our students, we see it takes about like 6 to 7 drafts is kind of like a nice sweet spot. You don't need to do like 6 or 7 drafts in 6 or 7 days. That would be crazy. But maybe over the course of a few weeks or months even. But over like 8 or 9 drafts, and people really start to get kind of crazy. So there's kind of a little bit of a sweet spot from our experience. And then like you said, yeah, you can actually, I think a lot of students don't know this, but you can change your Common App from when you submit it early, the actual Common App essay, and even a lot of the details related to like your activities. You can alter that between early and regular decision. And so a lot of students do. Sometimes if they get like deferred or rejected, obviously if you get accepted, you're kind of chilling. But yeah, you can still change and update your information. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Big Red to Big Red. So now you are a first year at Cornell. What has that been like? If you could share maybe some of the highs and lows. I know you've only been there for a semester, but yeah, I'm curious to know about your impression of the school. Just tell us a little bit about what it's like being a Cornell student today.
Academically, socially, and I think just personal fit, I think Cornell has been everything that I hoped it would be. I was very nervous going into Cornell because
Hmm.
of course, Exeter is only about 1,000 people. Cornell is the biggest Ivy. We have over 14,000 undergraduates. At Exeter, I had built up so many friendships and relationships through all the clubs that I had been in and my dorm and things like that. I was like feeling very settled and at home. And I was like, I love knowing everybody that I see on the paths. Like, I love
Mm.
waving to them and things like that. And I was like, I'm not going to have that at Cornell. But I think I do have that because I pushed myself to join a lot of organizations and clubs that I was interested in. I'm in the Chinese Student Association, which is a big part of my social life, and also just we have like fam systems in college,
Hmm.
and basically you get multiple bigs sometimes and multiple littles. They're essentially like upperclassmen that are like adopting you into their family. That has been huge for me. I look up to my bigs all the time when I have problems, when I have questions. I'll like ask them. We hang out on the weekends. We'll like cook. We'll do hot pot together, things like that. I think academic fit, I was nervous because a lot of times, Cornell gets a bad rep for the STEM classes or it being very difficult. I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to keep up. But I will say, no matter how hard the course is, like I can really see the quality. And one specific example that I have for that is CS 1110. It's the introductory Python class taught by Walker White. He's this legendary professor. The way that the course is structured, the way that they teach you Python step by step, like I don't think I took like CS classes all throughout Exeter. I like learned Python, whatever, but like I never understood it the way I do now because I took the class, right? And so I
Wow.
think that speaks to the quality of the assignments, the way he lectures, the amount of TA support that there is, like the
Mm.
things you do in labs, like all of that, I think speaks to the quality of education that's available at Cornell. Yeah, I think personal fit, I like the campus a lot. It's a lot bigger than you would expect. I have to wake up minimum 30 minutes before because if you want to
Oh,
walk to
wow.
class, you have to, I'm not even lying to you. Like, you know, when your parents are like, oh, I had to cross a river and a mountain to get to class when I was a little kid, like, I'm still doing that. Like, I,
I think
I
there's like
crossed,
bridges over some of these
yes,
gorges that you have to
yeah,
cross.
yeah. Like all the freshmen live on North Campus, right? And I live
Uh-huh.
in this gorgeous dorm, but you have to walk minimum, like you have to cross the gorge, you have to climb up like a hill, this atrocious hill. You have to like walk some more, and then like minimum, if you like want to walk from class to like dorm, it's like at least
Mm,
15 minutes. So that's like, you know, whatever. But it does give me a lot of time outside. I really have
mhm.
always been someone who really enjoys nature. And so it's nice to like, you know, listen to all the birds and like see the beautiful leaves. Like Ithaca really is like gorgeous. Like,
Cornell markets that a lot on their website. They're like beautiful Ithaca. I spent a summer there for a Cornell course long, long ago, maybe in like
um,
2014 or 2015. And in the summer times are even more beautiful. But yeah, some of the professors who were teaching in the summer, they were like used to attend Cornell back in the day, and they're like, yeah, it could be a little rougher in the winters. But yeah, I'm wondering if you can tell us more about some of these like Cornell stereotypes. I've heard that in the past, like, oh, it could be like a really depressing place, and to some degree, every university will have some depressing, I guess you could say, like programs or parts of the experience or curriculum. I'm curious to know your thoughts on that.
I think for one thing, everybody in Ithaca suffers from seasonal depression, but I think that's normal for every school on the New England coast ever. It just comes with, you know, you get out of class and it's dark. You can't really do anything about that. Like it's not Cornell specific, but because it's so cold in Ithaca and also the classes are hard,
Mhm.
I think it is hard to manage your mental health and make sure that, you know, you aren't constantly sad about everything. I think the engineering students have it the hardest. I'm in CALS, so it's the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, but I'm studying information science. So I brush elbows with engineering
Mhm,
students all the
mhm.
time, but the requirements are different for every college in Cornell. And I think that also means like the amount of toll that's on your workload and on your mental health is different in every college.
Right.
A lot of times we'll joke like, oh, the hotel school students, like we call them hotelies, they have the least amount of work. They're like the happiest. They go out, whatever. And I think it's true to a certain extent, but it's also because of the amount of classwork that you're doing, right? Yeah, it's definitely very dependent on what you're studying.
What made you want to choose cows? I've heard like really remarkable things about the Cornell Food Science Agricultural Science program. I think it's one of the best in the country. Same thing for the Hotel Business Administration. But yeah, what led you to choose that program or major?
I just knew that I was interested in technology. I knew that I wanted to try and maybe integrate that through business and make sure that the technology is useful for other people. And so when I was looking at the majors that were available from Cornell, like that seems like it was a good fit because I didn't necessarily want to study computer science alone. At least like before CS 1110, I was like, oh, like I can't do coding. Like I can code hypothetically, but if you ask me to pull out like a game right now, like I couldn't. Now I can because I took CS
Wow.
11. Yeah, I made Space Invaders by myself. Very proud of myself for that one. I think like I didn't necessarily want to do an engineering focused major, so that leaves me with like arts and sciences and College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. And the main thing about that is even though they offer information science in both schools, it's very different in terms of the college requirements. Like for CALS, there's no language requirement, but you have to take biology,
Mm,
right? But like in arts and sciences, you have a language requirement, but you also have more like humanities focused core classes.
mhm.
And I think CALS is a great school. I love it there. There are like cows on the like agriculture lawn sometimes. We'll have like llamas there. Besides the amazing fun animals that come to visit. I think the people in CALS are also very down to earth because they spend more time on like fields that generally aren't studied as much. And because Cornell is the top of its field with all the like nutritional science, food science, all these like majors that typically wouldn't be offered at other colleges, I think that keeps the school very grounded and makes the culture very collaborative.
So yeah, you've talked a lot about the Cornell highs and what you like, enjoy, and admire about the school. What else would you change about Cornell? What are some of like, Have you had like tough days? What are some of the lowest lows aside from hiking 30 minutes to class? But is there anything else that you would change about the school so far?
I wish people told me how competitive clubs were in college. Yeah, I was in the trenches when I was applying. It genuinely is like you have a resume drop, and then you have your first round of
Oh,
interview, and then your second round of interview. Just to like clarify, this is like mostly for the business clubs and like,
hmm.
the consulting clubs, finance clubs, whatever. Like there are a lot of barriers to entry. You have to coffee chat the
Oh,
members,
geez.
you have to like go to the information session, you have to show demonstrated interest. My first few weeks there, I was drowning. Like my GCal was full. Like I had like information session, then coffee chat, and like whatever. And it's like you learn a lot during the process, but you're like, why do I need to do so much after I already got in to prove myself to these other students that are just a year older than me? Yeah, it can be like very stressful and demoralizing a little bit, but I think I understand why it's like that because there are
Yeah.
so many qualified people. It's like you can't necessarily, especially if you're working on like high level projects and things like that, like if you're in a consulting club, it's not like you can put like 50 consultants on one project, right? Like as much
Right.
as people would want to do it. So I think that's one thing that I have a major gripe about with a lot of IVs. It's very pre-professional.
Yeah.
People are thinking about recruitment, consulting, like IB. I spend a
Mhm.
lot of time in the CALS quad. We have like different quads for the different schools. Sometimes they'll
Okay.
have classes all over, but because Dyson, the business school, is
Hmm.
technically part of CALS, I spend a lot of time around them as well. I want to go into business in the future, so I think spend a lot of time like thinking about these kinds of pre-professional clubs because they have a lot
Yeah.
of different resources to help you through the recruitment process. I think that can be really helpful, especially if you don't have anyone else in your family that has done that type of job before. But a lot of the students that I talk to that are in Dyson often are, very stressed out about like it's a very pre-professional culture. Like people are talking about their recruitment cycles and like kind of internship they're gonna have this summer and things like that. And so it can be stressful to be in that kind of environment
Mhm.
all the time. And I don't necessarily know if I could change that. It feels like it's been such a part of the school for so long,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially like the business majors. That's my main complaint, though, about going to a rigorous school. It tends to be very competitive, even if you try not to be yourself.
Yeah, totally hear you. And it was pretty similar at Yale, especially for the consulting business clubs, like you mentioned. I don't know if it's also the same for other clubs, but for instance, when I was at Yale with the Chinese American Students Association, if you wanted to help lead, you would have to apply, or even sometimes to volunteer for like this Yale undergraduate prison project. I literally just wanted to volunteer and help people, and we still had to apply. I was going crazy. I was like, why? It doesn't make any sense to me. I just want to help. But once I kind of was leading some of these clubs, I could also see because a lot of people would flake, they would get busy, they wouldn't show up. So then having a more thorough application process helps guarantee that, helps create prestige, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and I sometimes wonder if it's beyond something that an individual can fix. I was talking to Tina, and it's like for some of the dance groups, you have to audition. It's like
Yeah.
very chicken and egg. Like, how are you supposed to get experience if you don't have experience? Anyways, so at least we tried to make like the breakdance club more inclusive just by obviously you didn't need any prior experience to show up. Yeah, it is something that I wish we could just kind of like snap our fingers and change and make more inclusive. I think it's very like, in some ways it's a dichotomy or almost a paradox. You have like the major and the classes can be very, very collaborative. And then on the other end, you have clubs which can be kind of like a little bit more exclusive or competitive. But would you say it's more collaborative or competitive, or do you see the two existing at the same time? Or maybe you can even also compare it to Exeter. Is it similar or different in that way?
I'd like to think Cornell is very collaborative overall. I
Mm.
think Cal's influence and also just like people at Cornell that somehow end up being there. Maybe it's the admissions committee working overtime. Yeah, like people are very nice there. Very collaborative in the end.
Can you give us some examples of like what does this collaboration look like? Are you guys like hanging out and chatting over piece sets? Or are you guys like, creating new projects from scratch together, or what does that collaboration look like?
Oh, we have a huge entrepreneurship push at Cornell. We have what's called like e-hubs, and so they're like entrepreneurship hubs, and basically they're just like places dedicated for students to like work on their startup ventures. And I like walk by sometimes, and like I'll see
Hmm.
like teams like huddled up at a whiteboard, and they're like making new ideas and ideating for their next project and things like that. I think that definitely contributes to like the collaborative culture. But the entrepreneurship resources are great, and I think I see the most collaboration in those places.
Mm.
Even when you are coffee chatting or like, talking to upperclassmen, they
Yeah.
are all generally very willing to help you and like talk to you. Like this one senior that I coffee chatted for a club that I wanted to join, she was in like senioritis almost again, but
Hmm.
because she's like now a
Hmm.
college senior, return offer secure, things like that. She like went out of her way to, she was also like Chinese American, had a lot of the same backgrounds as me. We were only supposed to coffee chat for like 30 minutes, but we ended up like staying for like an hour and a half. She like talked me through like her like recruitment process, took the time to like explain to me like she was going to IB, and so I never heard of that before Cornell ever. But she like took the time to like explain everything to me. Actually, a lot of times I feel like I'm getting explained to because I'm a freshman, but it's great because I'm learning so much. I remember distinctly one of my computer science TAs, he was going into financial banking, but he uses like computer science to really help with that. Like it's his main
Hmm.
niche. We have like this like help hour for CS. So even after he had already spent like 2.5 hours explaining this past week's lecture to like our section, like I'm really curious, like what exactly is it that you're doing in like financial banking? And he just like took out the whiteboard and he like started writing all the industries, and he's like, okay, like here's like private equity and like whatever. And then I'm like, what's private equity? And he would explain everything to me. The way that these like upperclassmen go out of their way to spend time to help you and educate you, even when they really don't need to, speaks volumes about like how collaborative and nice the people are at Cornell. So I'm very grateful for that. I think like the people that I've met, especially, they've all been very kind and like willing to share the knowledge that they've gained.
Yeah, I honestly, coming into this, I still think I had some like negative impressions of Cornell. Hearing about it from like 5, 10 years ago, I think there was like a stereotype or a statistic about it being like one of the highest. It had one of the highest suicide rates in the country. But at the same time, then all like the people that I meet at Cornell are so warm and nice, and it's like also I guess it's one of those things where you're like locked up together in the winter, so people just manage to get along. But yeah, definitely changing my own perspective about Cornell. And I'm really shocked by a lot of the similarities between the Ivies as well. I'd never really thought that Yale and Cornell were that similar, but actually after hearing you talk about it, they're a lot more similar than I thought. Like really collaborative. I would say the main difference is that Cornell is much bigger, like you said, and has more emphasis on entrepreneurship. Yale has recently built a new entrepreneurship center, and I feel like these old schools are trying to show that they're like whatever, more hip, and you don't have to compete with each other, and you can start your own thing and make more pie instead of like fighting over slices of pie. I actually think Cornell in some ways is more flexible because, like you said, it offers like these really amazing programs. Like there's no way you're going to study nutrition science. If you want to study that, you should probably go to Cornell, not Yale. I think we have like a farm, but it can't even compare to like the Cornell farms, which are nuts, by the way. Yeah, this was really, really enlightening and super duper helpful. Is there anything else that you want to say before we wrap up here?
Two little things. One
Uh-huh.
thing, the ice cream is great. We have like our own dairy farms. Everything that we make at Cornell, I'm not kidding you, the food is really good. If you go to any other Ivy, not to hate on the other Ivies, but I've seen some of the other dining halls, not as good as Cornell.
It's like farm
Um,
to table, because
yeah,
like all the stuff
literally.
is fresh. Yeah.
Yeah, and the ice cream is unreal. Like it's dangerous for them to be having like Cornell made dairy ice cream like sitting there every meal. But definitely try that if you ever get a chance to visit. Maybe I'll ship you some if it doesn't melt. The other thing is like just to kind of add on, I joined like a design consulting club at Cornell. It's very popular among a lot of the information science majors at Cornell,
Oh.
but it's called design consulting at Cornell. I'm the treasurer for it. So I ran for e-board, woo, and then got it. I was a new member this year, and like the kinds of stuff that they do, like the club itself is very focused on like doing design, human-centered design. Like we work with clients and you like help them revamp their UI UX design, or like you help them with
Mhm.
their brand identity, that kind of thing. So it is like a consulting club in a sense. But I think another thing that is notable that I think kind of like wraps up the spirit of Cornell is it was founded like 5 years ago. I think
Mhm.
but the club itself is very well established. I think it speaks volumes to, like, how dedicated students are at Cornell to building new
Mhm.
things. A lot of the members there are involved in, like, the eHub, the entrepreneurship program
Mm.
at Cornell. The people that I've met in that club are all very, like, much like builders, like, they're willing to, like, create something, make something happen. Just, like, the quality and talent that I'm surrounded by in this club, I think just, like, really, like, it's, like, the best of Cornell, like, the amount of collaboration that happens, like, the amount of dedication. I see them in, like, Duffield, which is, like, the big engineering building, and they're always, like, working on their Figma designs and, like, talking with the clients and, whatever, like, the amount of passion that people have for the different clubs that they do end up in is, like, very impressive. The collaborative nature just, like, overall
Yeah.
is so, so overwhelming, but
Oh
yeah.
yeah, for sure. In college, like people take clubs even more seriously than their like actual school, you know? And for some of these cases are they're really really impressive, complex cases too. Yeah, I didn't know you were part of that. That's so cool. It really sounds like you found your people in a really short amount of time. Your
Mhm.
Chinese American Students Association club and the major. I've never heard somebody say such wonderful things about like an intro CS course ever. So that was also mind blowing, and just hearing about so many wonderful aspects of Cornell makes me like, yeah, I don't know, maybe I'll go for graduate school or something or return.
Get your
But yeah,
MBA.
yeah, we'll see. But yeah, Ithaca is a really beautiful, magical place. And thank you so much for your time, Cindy. I really appreciated your insights and everything you had to say. I'm sure students and also parents on the channel will find this really, really helpful. So thank you so much.